Hi, I'm Allana Ferguson, a former dual international for both rugby league and rugby sevens, and now I'm a commentator on Channel 9 and Stan Sport.
Hey, I'm Ben Parsons. Welcome to Player Power. We're with the amazing Allana Ferguson. I want to take you back in your journey. You're playing sport. Are you what I would consider a poor athlete? Like, are you struggling to pay your rent? Are you paying your rent? Are you paying your food? How do you actually survive being a professional athlete?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a lot of balance. Struggling, look, I always lived with a mate. So I was fresh out of uni, I was a teacher. Teaching wages are okay. But it was just a balance between training early in the morning, getting up, going to work, going to school to teach the kids, and then training late. So I was fortunate enough to live with friends, which took a little bit of the financial pressure off things, mates rates. But yeah, there was a lot going on.
So you see, this is the dilemma I have, right? We want, especially in the female foray, right? We want to call them professional athletes, but my definition of professional athletes, you don't have to have another job, right? So all the female athletes that I know, probably with the exception of cricket now, right?
Yeah.
They have to have 1, 2, maybe 3 jobs because they're employers and all of that. Is that where you see female sport? It doesn't matter if you're Olympic or NRLW. Is that where it's at today?
It's not where it's at, but I think it's where it needs to be, absolutely. Like, it's something to strive for. I'm with you, particularly the women that I'm closest with, like, let's refer back to the NRLW and that it's gone semi-professional. They all have 2 jobs at the very least. I think the ones that are struggling the most are the women that have chosen to have kids as well, and they're balancing that part of life, which is, we've both got kids, we know it's completely different. That changes things up a lot, but yeah, it is hard to find that balance. I think they're in a spot now where a lot of clubs in particular are trying to find them roles within the club so that it fits their training schedules and when they play. But for me, I had to wake up at 4:30 every day. I had to train. Then I went to work. That was weight training and conditioning. Then I'd go to work and I'd teach the kids. And then it's not till late at night that you've got your footy training, because those people with a 9 to 5 job can't get there until 6:30. So you get home at 9 p.m. every night, have a really late dinner, and then wake up and do it all over again. So it is a huge sacrifice. I think the best thing about women's sport in that space is that it's only the people that love it and live and breathe it that do it, because it is hard and it's a lot. But yeah, getting past that point and making an income is so important to get the best product, which is what we want entertainment-wise and for the women as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're one of the plights that sort of resonates with me is Olympic athletes, right? So once every 4 years you're up in lights, and the rest of the time you really don't get that much coverage. And then you're expected, because of, depending on where you are on the grants program, you might be getting $22,500 a year, and you're expected to pay for your coaching and all of that.
You can't buy milk and bread in 2023 with $22,000 a year. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, and one of the areas that obviously Player Power is really passionate about is that we think that the opportunity to become that professional side is through social media revenue earns, right? And the thing that keeps alarming me is that nobody's showing anybody anything. So I want to talk through your journey, because you've now got a reasonable following, but I want to go back, right? You told me a story. You're playing for Australia and you had a private account.
Yeah, I had a private Instagram account because that was the biggest and the best thing at the time. This is what, like 6, 7 years ago. I had a private account. So I was actually involved when I started playing rugby league again. I grew up playing when I was 4 with the boys, but as an adult, my first year of playing I was fortunate enough to play for New South Wales and then for the Jillaroos in that year. And that was the first game of women's rugby league when the Jillaroos went over and played the Kiwis to ever be televised. So the audience and people wanting to watch obviously grew exponentially, and there was sort of this excitement around the game, and I was heavily involved in a lot of those post-game conversations and interviews. And then coming back home that following weekend, just on Fox coverage and Channel 9 coverage, there were a lot of requests I guess, to get me to jump on and speak about the game. So Women's Rugby League was almost in no spotlight whatsoever before that, and there was a fair bit of traction from that one tournament. And I had a lot of, traction as a result of that. And the NRL specifically said to me, we need you to change your socials from private to public. And I was just like, I'm not comfortable with that whatsoever. I had like, whatever it was, 500, 600 followers of like my mates and people that lived in the area. And I just didn't like the idea of it. They said, well, if you don't want to do that, you need to create an athlete's page. And I was like, oh, I don't know, tossed and turned about a few things. I didn't want to go on any of the shows. I didn't necessarily want to make my profile public. And then my dad actually said to me, you know what, why don't you do, not specifically to the social stuff, but to go on their shows, why don't you just give it a crack once? You've always given everything a crack. If you hate it as much as you think you're going to, well, you've done it once and then you can, you know, ignore the request for the next time. So I did it. And that next day I went to Woolies to buy my groceries and a bloke came up to me and he said, hey, I saw you on the footy show last night. They showed some vision of us playing and he said, my daughter's been asking me to play rugby league for years and I've never let her. I'm going to let her play now. I went home that afternoon and I changed my Instagram social media account to public because I was like, you know what, if there's like all I've ever cared about is rugby league. I used to fall asleep with my boots on. I had like a soft plush footy toy, which was out of a Nutri-Grain packet or something. That was my teddy at night. Like I was a proper diehard dag, loved it. And I just thought if there's one girl out there that's allowed to play rugby league because her dad saw me playing footy on telly, then that was all worth it. And that was sort of when it opened my eyes to maybe the social media side of things and like what could I really lose from doing that. As soon as I did it, the NRL account, their public account, posted a photo of me, which I didn't actually know about. So I'd gone to bed, so I'd changed it. I'd gone to bed the next morning, woke up, as we do, like picked my phone up, went on socials, and I was like, this is a glitch. Like I kept refreshing my page and I had like 18,000 followers from overnight, from them posting one photo of me in a green and gold jersey. Like it was an up close kind of picture. And I was like, holy dooly, that's mental. Crazy. I couldn't believe it. I was like, that's actually insane. And then I guess from there to sort of where we are now, and I mean, there's a few years in between, I saw a lot of positives and I just focused on them because I think the way that everyone views social media differently, but the positives outweigh the negatives for me, and they have from that very day.
Well, it's interesting because social media isn't going away, right? And we won't name and shame anybody if you're on your...
Don't get me in trouble.
Panel, but there's a couple of the old school guys...
Totally.
...that go, well, the athletes shouldn't be on it. Like, it's distracting. And my argument is, well, if there's a negative comment about them, right, their family shows it or their friends screen grab it or whatever... You can't live in a bubble and be away from it. You've got to be on it.
Yeah.
You're going to see it. They're going to touch it. What's your advice if you're an athlete watching this going, yeah, do I lean in? Do I not lean in? Now that you've actually leant in.
Well, let me tell you, this only happened maybe a month or so ago, a conversation with one of those blokes who, I won't say him because he's obviously a great mate, but you would have heard him say it if you watch our Channel 9 coverage anyway, just slamming social media. And we had a conversation off air, because I would never say this necessarily in public as such, like on air in front of that many people. But I said, you know what? I understand your perspective, but you grew up in a world where you went straight from school to playing first grade footy. You were the bee's knees, you had great contracts. I understand that you had a hard life before that, but you have made an absolute flogging from playing rugby league and now working in the space that you do, being a commentator. Like, since you started playing rugby league, have you ever had to worry about buying milk and bread or, you know, those new pairs of shoes that you want? No. I said, okay, great. So up until my latest contract, I was earning more money from social media than I was from the network. And I said, that's just to put it into perspective. So for me to not share things, and I'm very genuine about the way that I share on social media, for me to not share those day-to-day things, I don't get the bigger contracts coming through, and I'm not in as fortunate of a position as what I am now. I do it very genuinely, and I only do things that I care about. But even just like my kids and what I'm doing on the weekends, certainly behind the scenes stuff at work, the more I sort of share about just like, this is my life, I might look like a flog and I haven't slept in 3 days with no makeup, or I might look slightly polished at work. Like, I enjoy showing the contrast and I love showing my kids, but if I don't share that day-to-day stuff, then it doesn't bring in those bigger contracts. And I found that that's really what works for me. But an absolute no-brainer for me was knowing and using social media to a way that I believe in, and it has certainly helped me come out ahead.
Yeah, I see it as like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And what I mean by that is that the bigger your audience you get, the more your employer needs you, right? Because you help them get eyeballs to the television set.
Absolutely.
But if you're an athlete, right, the more people you can get to a game, sell merchandising, all of those things that clubs rely on revenue-wise. But then on top of that, you become more appealing to brands that make sense for you. You got to partner with people that make sense for you as your brand. So the person who we're talking about, I assume, New South Wales coach, but
he's all right though. He'll own it. When I said that to him, he was like, "Yeah, right." He had no idea because he doesn't have to know.
Yeah, but I think that
It's a different world.
No, but it's the world. It's not a different world. Like, hey, we live in parallel universes, and there's a bunch of athletes that are immune to it, right? They're in it and living and breathing, especially the younger ones, right? They don't, like, we're old.
Especially the younger ones, especially the females. I think like there's such a huge space for it, and it's an absolute no-brainer.
So you've played for both codes, right? Rugby union and rugby league. Why don't you think they're more invested in their athletes becoming more bigger brands on social?
In the women's space?
Yeah.
I think there's still a lot to do with the women's space. It's just an afterthought.
Yeah.
Really. I think there are a lot of people, and it's up to the individuals to sort of, well, up until this point anyway, around the education and how to use the tool properly. It's up to the individuals and how well they can do it. Also management, if you've got great management and people around you with good advice is obviously always key. But I mean, after that first tournament, when I went over and played the Kiwis wearing the green and gold for rugby league, I had an Adidas contract within a month. And it was the first player to ever get an individual contract.
Oh, wow. Okay. So do you have a player agent at that time?
Just after, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So when you first started getting endorsement deals, did you come up with the rate card or did the manager come up with the rate card?
The manager. Because I like up until that point, we're used to paying our own way to play sport, right? When I started playing for New South Wales and for the Gillaroos, we'd get like a daily wage, but it was nothing. It was nothing in the scheme of things. It is much better now, mind you. Like, it is so much better right now. But 6 or 7 years ago, you think, like, no one's ever watched women's rugby league. It's never been on the telly unless you know where to turn up on a weekend and watch it. No one's ever seen it. So there's no money involved. So at that point in time, it was anything's a bonus. I think the first thing that I ever got was for a 12-month period, mind you, was 10 grand. I thought that was the best thing ever because every birthday growing up as a kid, what did I ask for? New footy boots, new joggers. Like, that was always my thing. I'd need a brand new footy with new grip. I'd want the new boots, the best in the biz, and maybe some new joggers. So I'm not only getting, I think it was like 10 grand worth of product, 10 grand cash or whatever for 12 months. Like, it was insane to me that was whatever I'd spend my pocket money on, that was it. Now I get it for free and I get paid. Like, insane. If someone offered that now, I'd be like, okay. Or if I heard that was the offer to one of the female athletes in the space now, which is the most relevant thing, if that was offered to an NRLW player right now, and I've got a lot of friends playing, and quite often they still have management, particularly, the top few players. I've had plenty of people ask me, what do I think? Just given like experience and what I've been through, and I'd say, absolutely not.
Okay, well let's delve into that.
Absolutely not.
But if you were natural akin to media, right? Now, meaning that you had more profile than all of the Gillaroos combined, for some reason media went to you. Now, I don't know if that's, do you think that was because you were just naturally happy to do the interview and you were slightly entertaining?
Oh, I sort of got caught off guard. Like, being in the spotlight is my worst nightmare. I would only ever let my mum and dad come to my footy games on a Saturday. So, but being over there, straight after the game, the first one was at a halftime walk-off interview, and then the biggest initial one was post-game, and we just come out. I felt like I had a great game. I had so much fun. Like I think about rugby league before I go to sleep. I dream about it. Like I was in my absolute element. So we'd just come off the field, we'd beat the Kiwis. I get asked to walk past the media quickly and speak about it. It's so raw. I hadn't even really celebrated with the girls yet. And they're asking me these questions about the game. So I've got like this ginormous grin on my face. I'm speaking about how much I love rugby league. I did a couple of decent things in the game, so there might have been some good highlights. And I think it was probably just off the back of that, of just the true passion and like how raw I was about what just happened. I think that's where it sort of started.
So, but you naturally then get media attention, which helps.
Well, then it's
deals,
the world.
right?
It's the world we live in, right? Like even now, if you trial people all the time, whether it be a post game interview for one of the players or getting them to come on the panel for everyone's on trial. So you only sort of get one shot to make your first impression. So I sort of think the way that it organically happened was potentially that I spoke decently, but I had a big grin. I love rugby league, and that all sort of came across into the interview. So what happens for the next couple of games? They get me to do more of the interviews, and then it happened as a result of that. Can you come on this show? Can you do that? That's what gave me the profile.
So, okay, so I'm in agreement there. So if you're an athlete right now,
Yeah.
and you're not doing post and you're not post game interviews and you're not on social media, why would a brand give you money?
Well, you've got to create it yourself.
Correct. So that's where I'm going with you said about the deal. If you're an athlete, it doesn't matter whether you're in a broadcast sport or a non-broadcast sport, right? You've got to create your brand to then, which attracts everybody. And one of the things you were talking about not making money, I learnt something on this journey that there's a bunch of people that represent Australia that get sent a tracksuit saying you've been selected for the Australian squad, and then they get given a letter and their parents have to pay either contribution or they have to pay for some sort of flights or whatever. So representing your country, you have to pay for the privilege. A lot of these sports, right?
Or go and sell some raffle tickets. That still happens.
Which I'm excited because I just think of the land of opportunity with player power, right?
Yep.
Like I just think if you can educate yourself on how to create an audience and then you ultimately commercialize it, hey, digging it up to you, right? Like go hard. So go forward with me. You've started to get it together.
Yep.
9 comes to you and says, I want you to be on television. Where do you start and what are you thinking?
Well, after that first time when I said, you know what, I'll give it a crack, I hated it. I was as uncomfortable as I thought I was going to be.
That was on the footy show?
It was on the footy show. You watching would have thought it was great. I was there, I was talking about it with a smile on, but me, myself, the way I felt, my heart felt like it was beating out this far in front of my chest. I was uncomfortable. It was my worst possible nightmare. Came true until the next day. Until that day when the dad came up and said, I'm going to let my daughter play rugby league now because I saw you playing. And what I had to do for so long, like honestly the first 2 years, so what actually happened was they chose 2 of us Gillaroos to go on the Sunday footy show. It's a 2-hour show, so it's quite lengthy, so you don't necessarily have to be as articulate. You don't have to be quick. You're not like, okay, you got a 22 seconds to get that out and then we got to cross to this. It's just like you can just speak freely. It's a lot more relaxed. Still live telly, but it's just a really chill show. So they chose 2 of us and we did alternate Sundays. And they said for next year, there'll only be 1 of you. So like there's a lot of pressure in it. And I felt that pressure and it sort of took me a couple of years to get past feeling that anxious about what I was doing. And I didn't even know what anxiety was until I started doing that. Like going to school, going to uni, playing footy, cruisy.
So you lean in on social, right? And your career. So when you started getting feedback in the positive form, you were like, okay, I can do something in this component. And then you decided, hey, I'm going to do what my week is and my family and everything like that. How long did it take for you to get some traction? You know, you said you woke up with 18,000, but how did you go from 18,000 to 100,000?
I think it just built as I went along. There was obviously a big difference between doing the Sunday footy show and then going on the NRL coverage and commentating. That was quite a big jump because the audience is very different. But in between, it was just all I've ever done from then until now is I've always made sure that I was comfortable with what I was doing and what I was sharing. And that's changed along the way. even just like it's a whole nother world, right? Like your insights and your followers and who's looking at your content. In the beginning, when I got a lot of followers initially, and for those first sort of 1 to 2 years, I think it was like 70-30 or maybe even more, maybe like 75% males and not as many females. And it's slowly changed throughout what I've been sharing. Since then, I've had 2 kids, so that obviously changes. And I only ever share the things that I'm comfortable and that I'm genuinely doing in the day. So it could be me at work. I cover a lot of games of footy, both rugby league and rugby union over the weekend. So like behind the scenes stuff, chatting to people, crap food that we eat on the sideline, whatever it is. And then when I'm at home, my kids being feral, us having fun at the park, me going and training at the gym, like that sort of stuff. So I think that has organically grown as well as being on TV, but just 100% being true to myself and what I'm doing. People just want to know what you're doing.
Okay, so I won't name and shame the person, but we did a meeting and a football manager was like, well, when are they going to have time to play football? And I was like, no, your football career is your priority. But in terms of timing, right, you've walked me through your schedule, which is a bit crazy, right? But you still find time to put social up, right? How did you make it a priority in your day? Like, when did you go, hey, this is what I'm doing?
Because it is a priority. Because it is so important for my work as a whole and the way that I've built my lifestyle, my life, our income. I actually find it quite easy because I'm not worried about editing this photo and changing that to that. Like, it's very raw. It's like you do a quick video, you chuck it up. Or if there's a photo, bang it on the story very quickly. So I don't actually feel like it takes that much time because say if I'm at the park with my kids, right? And we're there for an hour and a half, I might take one video of like my daughter doing something silly or both kids having heaps of fun, and I'll post it as soon as I get home, maybe when they're eating their lunch. And same at work, like it'll be one quick video of the team's running out or Origin crowd or something crazy, you just post it. Like, you don't really need to do much to get it out there. So I've just always found a way to prioritize that because it is so important. Well, for myself anyway, for my personal brand, our income, our family, it makes so much sense to get that while I'm going. Because yeah, I'd be fine if I just was sort of working off my salary, but it's an absolute no-brainer to be able to expand that when it is so simple to do.
So if you're an athlete that is living in a 4-bedroom shared house, not earning that much money out of your sporting career, and you're trying to do 1 or 2 jobs, what do you tell them about social? Other than
find something. It doesn't have to be much, right? Find something unique that you've got or something interesting. So it could be that, it could be anything. Like, you could be funny, you could have a funny housemate. Like, you just need one thing for people to see, and then you always relate it to your sport as well. So I think people seeing both sides of your life is really important because they're so interested. They see you, if your sport's televised, right? Or if you're playing club rugby and a lot of people turn up and watch you on the weekend, they see those bits. They want to know what else you're doing. So they want to know, do you know what I mean? Like, they want to know maybe what you're doing in the sheds before or on game day in the lead up and things like that. I just think, and then obviously the more exciting it is, the better. If you're in a share house with 3 other people, I dare say it isn't boring. Choose some of the fun bits.
Yeah, one of the things that a lot of athletes, so I want to touch on 2 things. Personal life, right? People go, I don't want to put my kids up. When we say personal life, one of the things is it's got to be authentically you. And if you want to not have your kids on, that's fine. There's no dramas with that. But you're trying to humanize your brand, right? So it could be some ritual that you do that's, you go to the beach beforehand, or you do 10 pull-ups or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be anything. And the second thing is, because of our culture, right, we don't like tall poppy syndrome, right? So lots of people are in fear of that, about, I don't want to talk about me. How do you think through that tall poppy issue?
Like, very similar. I just share what I'm doing. I'm never uncomfortable. Like, there are so many different things that pop up, especially once you get some kind of traction on socials. I find there are a lot of different opportunities that come up. There could be 20. You might choose the one that fits you. That's all I've ever done. And there might not be any out of that 20. You can wait till the next month. But I don't know. I just think if I'm being myself, what I think about, okay, right, particularly if there was a paid job, whether it be, a contract for 3 months, or whether it be your next big brand ambassadorship, what I've always thought about, and sometimes they come in with the figure and it's like, damn it, that's a solid chunk, that's a no-brainer. What I always think about is sitting back, okay, I've got my 3 best mates and my mum and dad and my husband in front of me, and I'm going to pitch it to them. Do I feel comfortable telling them exactly what I'm going to do, how I'm going to share that content, or do I feel like a bit of a wanker? And if I don't, if it feels like it's genuine and I want to share it with them because it's either A, already part of what I'm doing, or B, something that I'm desperate to do, play on. That's the right fit for me. If it isn't, see you later. It's not worth the money. And I think that's how you grow it, because you might think that, bugger, I've just missed out on that 20K thing. I only had to post it twice. But you know what? By being yourself over a longer period of time, you're going to get a lot better content. You're going to get a lot better opportunities in the long run. You've just got to sacrifice that short period. And I've sort of found, like, I've learnt the hard way. I did a couple of putrid things in the beginning. It was in the very beginning. Like, it was when I was still paying to do things, right? I don't want to say any brand names, but let's just say I posted a juice, a one-off post for $2,000. I thought it was the best thing ever. I was like, this is so good. But really, what was it? It was me standing at a beach with like a juice in my hand going, I never want to do that again. That does not align with me and my personal brand and what I'm sort of doing. It was not my juice. I'm not selling it. You know what I mean? Like, it was a one-off. Give me that $2,000. That's awesome. Never again. Like, now looking back, great lesson for me to have learned. But I just think if you can share, well, what's worked for me anyway, is to share genuinely what I'm doing every day. Then the bigger ones, but the ones that are very relatable to you. So for me, the way I live my life could be something in health and fitness, because I share that I train the days that I can, but like, I love it. It could be something to do with that. Could be anything to do with my kids or a holiday, because we don't get much time, but we want really quality time. So like, I've worked with Tourism Queensland and Tourism New South Wales, because they really align with what we do. Obviously anything in the sports space, and then a little bit in, now that I work on television, like a little bit in fashion and a little bit in, anyway, but they're the big ones, right? So I've sort of found that, yes, you may sacrifice a little bit of money in the short term, but if it doesn't align with you, don't do it, because one, you're not as marketable and you can't earn as much money for when the good ones do come around, but you just feel so much better. Like, you want to do it. You want to do it because you're either doing it anyway. Most of it, you're doing it anyway. The things that I do, I'm doing it anyway.
When we, off camera, we spoke, and I've just realised, you gave me a fairly, not blasé, but you didn't have much rigor around the answer, right?
Yeah.
When we're off camera. I've just realised how you actually do have a brand plan, right? And your filter that you just spoke about, your parents and your husband and that, could you generate? That's one of the best filters I've ever heard about being authentic, right? Because authentic, it's a buzzword everyone uses. I'll be authentic.
I know, genuine.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of people going, I'm in desperate fear of what the feedback. Can I talk about, we joked that people will DM you.
Yeah.
Not in that way.
So much, no. Happily married.
Slide into the DM. But it's more about your fashion, which blew my mind, right? You get a lot of people going,
Mine too.
Hey, I love your outfit. Where did you get it? What did you do?
Yeah.
So on that, do you now go, hey, you could have a fashion brand as a partner?
I worked with Westfield for quite a while until it didn't actually suit the line of work that it became too much, the workload. But yeah, it does. What I said to you was I could go on air and we wear some pretty cool power suits. I like them. My strict rule is, and I'm very easygoing, but I don't want to be wearing a dress. I don't want to be wearing I'm a footy player. I just think that I actually asked initially, can I just wear a black suit every week? Because I'm here to talk about footy. And I've already bloody got blonde hair, and I just, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard enough. But anyway, that wasn't allowed. But my thing is suits. Suits and sneakers. In studio, sometimes we wear heels, but I love them. Like, honestly, the suits that I get to wear, I choose. I work with our stylist at Channel 9 to be able to wear them. So I'm heavily involved in those decisions anyway. But after any broadcast, say, for example, there's 20 DMs about that one suit. I reckon maybe 5 to 7 would be from people that had seen them on air. Hey, just saw you on the footy. What brand is that suit? And then if I post something on my story, same thing. Takes like 5 seconds to get a photo and you bang it straight up. so many people want to know what brand are your shoes, what brand's your suit, where's it from? So, but then also on the other side of that, people see what I do every day outside work. Like, I'm pretty dolled up for work. It's not how I live my everyday life. I wake up in the morning and I do my skincare, fix my brows, and I'm pretty much in activewear and chuck my hair up in a bun or something. That's just what I look like every day. So yes, I can show that I've got a polished look and I can wear cool suits, and I'm happy to share with people what I'm wearing. But then on the other side, it's like, this is actually me. I pretty much just wear activewear 24/7. And people want to know that too. Like if I'm running on the treadmill, if I'm at the gym and I've got a new Lululemon set on, they don't just want to know where it's from. They want to know exactly what crop top that is on the Lululemon site. So yes, there is work in that too, which blows my mind because I'm no fashionista. Like I'm pretty just whatever. I've got some nice stuff, but it's just not a huge focus for me is to always look great, but they just care about every last thing that you're doing, which is interesting. But it's also kind of cool because I get it, because I think that about people too.
We've spoken about the positives. Let's talk about some of the areas that make everyone worry about social media, which is the negative side. How do you process or work through someone saying something vile? Let's start real negative, but then someone not saying something very nice about you.
I think care factor is a big one. I think people that say that they don't read it, of course they do. If you've got social media, you're going to read everything. Truthfully, I'm very fortunate. I don't necessarily get slammed. There have been comments, but I don't know. You deal with it. Like it is what it is. I've grown up playing sport my whole life. I'm used to having coaches, and I'm used to not everything being pretty and exactly what I want to hear. So how I deal with it, if it was something on a public post and it was like truly rude, I think I've only done it twice. I'd just delete it. See you later. I'd delete it. But the most negative feedback that I sometimes get, which I find negative anyway, it's all relative, isn't necessarily about my work and what I'm saying on the football. Because the best thing is I genuinely don't care. Like I'm sitting next to some of the greats of the game. I'm sitting next to Joey, Freddie, Lockie, JT, Cameron Smith, Billy Slater, whoever it is. Like if those people next to me have a different opinion, all good. Like I'm just there for my opinion, and I genuinely don't care. So that's obviously part of my personality. So I truly don't feel too down about those things whatsoever. But the things that affect me the most are comments, and they're quite often from women as well, that would slide into my DMs and just, when do you ever spend time with your kids? Or it's that sort of stuff.
Parenting advice.
Yeah, it is, because I'm busy and I share that, right? So I'm like, I'm up at this time, I'm on this flight, I'm going to this game. And I never say anything back because I'm like, stay in your lane, firstly. But they're the ones that I remember. And whilst I could share and be one of those people that bites back and puts something on their story or feels the need to sort of say something, I just know within myself that, yes, I'm working my ass off, but you don't see you don't understand the quality that I get to have with my family. I don't miss out on time with my kids. I think time with my husband suffers sometimes because we have completely opposite work schedules. But in terms of those negative comments coming in, I'm like, I'm doing me. Like, I'm doing the best I possibly can. I'm raising my 2 kids the best way that I possibly can. When I'm not at work, I'm all in. Like, I'm crawling around, getting dirty, going down the slides at the park with them. So I read it and I take it on board, but like I just genuinely don't care. I haven't had any massive dramas that have been a huge issue, mind you. Like I haven't been put in any unsafe situations or felt that way at all. I just sort of think and look at that and go, you must have a boring life, or no dramas. Like that's your problem, not mine, because I'm good.
Where'd that self-belief come from, or self-navigation of belief that that's your opinion, that doesn't mean anything to me?
Do you more so mean with the boys when I'm working with them, or people that think about my job?
Yeah.
Do you know what? Like it may be different if I was uncomfortable with what I was speaking about, but I've been playing rugby league since I was 4 years old. I've watched every single game that was available for me to watch. So why isn't my opinion just as valid as theirs? The only reason I don't have the same resume as them is because I wasn't given the opportunities. But I don't know. I've grown up in a man's world. It's sort of how I just live my life. I've got 3 brothers. I'm very black and white in that sense. And I don't know, I just genuinely don't care. If someone's better than me at something, it's not because they're a male, it's just because they're better than me. So I sort of think the same about the blokes. Like I respect them. I love different opinions. I think it's great. I learned things from everyone, whether it be my mum and dad, my friends, my colleagues at work. I'm constantly learning. But my role within that game, or both games, rugby league and rugby union, is to share my opinion. And I'm just comfortable that my opinion is my opinion, and if yours is different, great.
Was that your father though that taught you that? Because there's a bit of self-belief. Because obviously you've had someone in your life be instrumental in self-belief. Because if you're an athlete at home and you're struggling to even pay the rent, and then you're worried about putting yourself on social media, what's your advice?
You know what? It only takes one person to believe in you and to validate how you feel, mind you. So I was very fortunate. I grew up in a very supportive household, and I think it can go one of two ways. You could grow up in a very unsupportive household and you could be the one to break that cycle. It will take a very strong personality to be able to do that, but I think it's possible. But it just takes that one person. I'm lucky enough that I got it from my family, without a doubt. And the things that my parents instilled in me from a very young age is writing down my goals and figuring out a way to get there. Like, I kid you not, from the time that I could write sentences, I've been writing down goals. And it could be things that are so small at the time to I still do it to this day, mind you. I've got 5-year goals written down. I've got 1-year goals. And I think it's that sort of practice, I guess, that we got encouraged to do as kids that's really worked out. And it's just like, it could be impossible. I have a picture at home of me wearing a Cronulla Sharks jersey playing in the NRL. Well, like, I would have been 7 or 8 years old, and that was obviously impossible to do, right? Obviously impossible. I was a girl playing rugby league. There were no females anywhere near in that space. And whilst I didn't play NRLW, I had to retire the year before that because of a knee injury. I got signed on the first ever women's NRL contract from Cronulla Sharks because they started a team which forced the NRLW to actually happen 3 years earlier, mind you. But I had my own Cronulla Sharks football jersey. We made that happen. Like, I genuinely believe that setting that goal, and I don't even know how old I was, to be honest, but I might have not even been able to write at that point. But drawing pictures, writing goals has always been a big part of how I've grown up. And that goal came to fruition, which really is pretty unrealistic when it actually happened, but we made it happen. I was a heavy part of why that happened too, mind you. Like, I was working closely with a board member at the Cronulla Sharks, someone that I knew from when I was a kid, and we made it happen. So that wasn't just like a throwaway dream. At the time, it was something that I truly believed in, and that was all I ever cared about, was playing rugby league, and I was a Sharkies fan. I grew up on the hill, to going through the processes and being in that. I made that happen to a degree. It was a big team and there were more people involved, but writing that goal and drawing that goal as a kid made that come to fruition.
Can you talk about visualization of your goal, right? Did you visualize where you are now?
I have along the way, certainly not when I started being in the media. It was my worst case scenario getting into this line of work. But once I decided that it was what I was going to do, and I'm all or nothing, mind you. So each week I took it as playing a game of footy. Like, if I'm not better the next week or the next time I'm on air, then it's not good enough for me. Like, I want to keep improving. So absolutely. Ever since I've committed to doing it, I've visualized, but I've written down goals. God, yeah. I wanted to be the first ever female commentator on the NRL coverage. And I wrote that down after my 3rd shift of doing the Sunday footy show. And I was the first one to do it. Like, just things like that. I've got goals now. I'm not going to say them out loud because how embarrassing. But I've got goals now. I've got goals for 10 years' time. Like, yeah, I truly believe in it. And I've always done it. But that's from my parents.
When did your parents teach you that?
Honestly, for as long as I remember, I've been doing that.
Okay. I didn't think we'd go down this path, but I'm really excited to, right? So all the people that I know have anything what the world would consider desirable, right? They saw it, like Walt Disney saw the theme park before it was even built, right? And he said, do you visually see all your goals?
Yes.
And how detailed are your visualizations?
So what I would do, I sit down and I write it.
Yeah.
pen on paper, very
Yeah.
old school. Same as my calendar, I'm pen on paper. Need to see it, need to write it, like feel it almost when it happens. And then that's what I think about before I go to sleep in bed. I'd lay in bed with my eyes closed thinking about that for 10 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. Like I have to see it. It's what I did when I played footy. I have goals about a game of football. I'd think about plays that I was going to do, people I was going to target, how we could actually get that desired outcome. Now my life's obviously shifted and I'm in a different space, but I do exactly that.
And when you have your goal, is there any, like, having a goal as a kid to play in a competition that doesn't exist is quite remarkably.
I think my goal was to play in the men's NRL, mind you. It changed along the way, of course, but like that was because we made it change.
So how big? I don't want you to, obviously, but how big are your goals?
Big, very big.
If you're a female athlete sitting at home, going, I can't relate to anything Allana's just said, and you are trying to figure out how to monetize your own brand and all of that. What's your tip? What with your visualization? Like, walk them through a process of what you would. I know you said you write it out, but like, can you go a bit deeper about how do you go from going that's not real to I can make that happen?
So you start. Well, not you. I start with the end goal. I think about a realistic time frame. Then I bring it back a year. So I'm like, I can do it quicker than that. But I start with the end goal. So if I'm an athlete, right, and at the moment I'm playing, let's just talk about rugby league. I'm playing club footy. Well, I want to be in the NRLW. Or I want to be playing State of Origin. Or I want to be wearing the green and gold. Okay, let's say it's the green and gold and I'm going to give myself 5 years because at the moment I'm 18 years old. I would scale it back to 4. I'd go, what are the steps to get there? And how am I going to do it? How am I actually going to do it? Well, you play in the best, the strongest competition. You make sure that you're signing up for a team with good players around you. And then the areas of your game that are suffering, whether it's your left to right pass or you haven't necessarily nailed your kicking game and you're in the halves, or you're a winger and you're fast but you don't have that extra edge, I'd go and work on that. But I really break things down. So I've got my end goal and then I've got my next week. And then whether it be months or years, like I actually spend a lot of time writing my goals because I just feel like you need to know the steps to get there. And whilst the end goal might seem quite unrealistic at the time, when you do break it down, it makes it achievable. One of those goals in the middle might be getting it out of our sponsorship. Well, I want to get it by this year. I want to have it at the end of my first NRLW season. How do you do it? You know what I mean? Like it all sort of align. Well, mine all sort of align together, but I really break it down. But start with the end goal and then, okay, let's work through the process. Because it's a lot less overwhelming to do it like that, I think anyway.
Allana, I've always thought you're great talent, right? That story you just told me made me more endeared to you because I'm like, because everyone that I know that's successful has had to do something like what you've just spoken through, right? There's nobody that I know that doesn't.
It's not just gifted, handed to you.
No. Unless you're a trust fund baby and.
Half your life.
Yeah, good luck to you. Right? You know what?
How good.
So now that you do that process, right? How do you dream of the women's sport competitions in Australia? Like, how do you see that? Because obviously we've had FIFA Women's World Cup, which was beyond expectations, which I still can't believe people didn't think was going to be as big as it was. It's mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing.
You know, we've got AFLW, we've got women's cricket, we've got women's, obviously, rugby league. Union's got a few things that they're sorting out. But what's not utopia, where do you see it?
I see it going as far as what is willing to be invested, mind you, but the best thing for women's sport is that the Matildas have just shown everyone, our entire nation, that people do want to watch women's sport. So now it's getting off the back of that and having people, it's the same thing as how do you believe in yourself? It's finding that one person that believes in you and one person that believes in your product. So for Women's Rugby League at the moment, we've got an expanded NRLW competition. There are 10 teams as opposed to 6. It's growing. We're hoping to get 3 Origin games instead of a 2-game series. there's a lot of momentum, but still not enough. I think it's about involving the right people to help make those decisions and to work through that process, as opposed to being like, hey, women's sport's kind of big at the moment. Let's just chuck in an extra few teams and see how it goes. And here's a broadcast deal that should be okay, or you know what I mean? Like, it's about investing properly, and you only need to find a few of the right people to make sure that happens and are involved heavily in those decisions. And I think we've got a really long way to go, mind you. Even for the Matildas, we have a long way to go. Like, that was a great start, but they still got that rights deal for unders, and there are still women in that team that aren't necessarily benefiting as much as your Sam Kerrs and your Caitlin Fords and your Mackenzie Arnolds. Like, they're still a long way off where they deserve to be, and it's just about getting the right people involved to make sure that it is done properly, because, like, enough's enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I see, this is where I think social. This is this is the one area that I'm like, because you can control it, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And everyone talks about, they, doesn't matter which broadcasters should invest more. And, they're under the pump commercially, right? Mm-hmm. But the one area that's growing in revenue and you can help control is social. And I'm trying to go,
it's crazy.
The promised land's over there. It's not far.
No.
Just turn your phone on.
The best thing about socials is you have control over it. Your broadcast deal, or you know what I mean, there are a lot of team alignments and things like that. You don't have control over a lot of that stuff. You have control over your socials, and there are so many different businesses and brands that are desperate to make their mark in the women's space because of all this traction. So many. I think also another thing about women's sport is it's a completely different market. Everyone wants a piece of the pie now, so you do it right. And you make yourself marketable, it's just, it will completely change your world. Completely change your world. And I don't think it takes long to figure out the best way to be able to do that. So that you're not looking at it thinking, oh, this is just another job. I feel really overwhelmed. We've got a tough training week this week, a big game coming up on the weekend. I just don't have the headspace for it. I think there are ways to do it so that it is really not overwhelming. If you've got a great team around you in terms of like a management team, that certainly helped me. They take a lot of the pressure off me for doing that. But same thing, like working with brands that align with you and you're doing some of that stuff anyway. Like it's easy, it's enjoyable, and you, which is most important, benefit more than anyone.
You spoke about that at your broadcast partner that you dictated around your what outfit, right? You spoke about suits before.
Yeah.
When brands come to you and it does partly align and they've got lots of money, when you're going through the contract offer detail and there's a bit where you're like, they want you to wear a dress. I know that's...
Yeah, no, all good, yeah.
But there's something that doesn't align with you. How... I know you're in a bit different position now, but when you first started to push back, going through that fear, pushing back, and then getting a yes or no, whatever the pushback is, how did you believe that you were doing the right thing? Because obviously you've got people around you that are saying you should take it or not do it, or, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's exactly the same way that I live my life. If it's something that I'm willing to compromise on, and sometimes it is, then I'm happy to do it. But if it's not, it's the same as a relationship. Myself and my husband. If he has a trait that I'm not willing to compromise on, then we wouldn't be married. I find contracts and working very similar. I'm very comfortable with saying that I'm either change the contract or I'm not interested because it doesn't align with me and what I want to do. You might miss out on the short term, but the next one that comes along will be better suited to you and it'll work a lot better. So honestly, it's all around, well for me, it's all around what I'm comfortable with, because that's the difference at the end of the day. Same way, I would approach a contract the exact same way as I would approach a relationship. If it works for both parties and I feel comfortable doing it and it's in my best interest and I'm passionate about it, sign me up. If it's not, there's another one coming.
Finally, what tips for athletes?
About getting involved in social media? I would say give it a crack, because it's a little bit of a no-brainer, and just find your unique space. People want to know more about what you're doing. Brands want to be involved one way or another, so make sure that it's you. Make it fun. Enjoy. If you don't enjoy doing anything, it's not worth it. So find a fun way to do it. I mean, have you seen the Inspired Unemployed? One of my best mates, it's Maddie's her brother. So those boys have made an absolute killing over being themselves. And I've known those boys for a very long time. That is them to themselves. They are absolute goofballs. They've never been any different. They've all got different trades. And then their socials started to take off a little bit by them just being themselves and being bored on a weekend in a share house making silly videos. And now, let me just tell you, they're doing very well for themselves. But not everyone's funny and not everyone has huge personalities, and I don't necessarily pretend to most of the time either. I just be myself. But it's just about finding that one thing that people find interesting and being relatable to, and give it a crack. It's a no-brainer. Like, what can you actually lose from putting yourself out there and trying to do that? Particularly if you're already in a space that has a little bit of traction, if you're playing sport. Why not try and capitalize off the back of that?
This has been way more insightful than I thought.
Has it?
Yeah, because you were open and honest about how you conduct your life, which I think is a really good reinforcement, right? You actually have a plan without telling people you have a plan, right?
I have a plan.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'd love every athlete to have, right? A plan to go out there and be their best version of themselves and go and become a professional athlete. Doesn't matter what sport or you play and what level you're at, there's this massive opportunity. And I think you're a great demonstration of how to go out and get it in terms of a structured manner. So congratulations to you and thanks.